Hey, hello. I would like to speak to the manager of this mountain.
That's so annoying. It's kind of like how big tech companies just buy great startups.
Yeah, they want market share. If you go to sleep hungry, your kalag will escape during sleep and go to the rice cooker and then get trapped in the rice cooker forever and ever. They're like X-Men. It's like an X-Men Anito. And they can lend powers to the shaman. On Etsy, you can hire witches from Ireland to cast spells for you.
I love it.
Welcome to the Gods Must Be Crazy podcast.
Welcome, guys. Sorry. The behind the scenes journey here is it's been 30 minutes and Anna and I have just been like fighting and
Figuring
troubleshooting
out
internet
what to
and
do,
microphone
what's happening,
issues.
the
Sorry, so
world.
I'm Ice.
I'm Anama.
And you're your host.
You look really good, Ice. You look really relaxed. Could you be on
Thank
vacation?
you. It's possibly the Balinese air. So I'm on vacation. I'm on vacation right now in Bali. But we wanted to record so that we can like load up on episodes for the next few weeks. So this is the first shot. Hopefully the quality just keeps getting better from here.
Of course, there's nowhere to go but up. We're on an upward spiral.
We are. Spiral.
An upward spiral of improvement versus a downward
Why
spiral
do we have
of
to
failure.
spiral?
So we're spiraling
All right.
into success.
So exactly. Always. No, so I'll show you the view of my villa later. It's really pretty. So I'm just like facing it. I was going to try to record from outside because it's so pretty there. But there was like jackhammering going on. So
oh no.
I'll spare you guys.
I was really actually thinking of recording from our backyard. But our neighbor Andre, who is a little bit younger than Tegan, is missing Tegan. And so he has parked himself outside our back gate and he's playing his trucks and say, Where's Tegan?
So
Where's Tegan? Where's Tegan? Super cute. Okay. So this is the second of many episodes that we're doing on the Babaylan. I hope you guys don't get tired of the topic. It's such a rich territory for us to play in, and we're doing it remotely. And I'm actually glad that you're there in Bali because I'm going to make you do some investigative reporting with the locals.
I know. I'm gonna look for like the temple dancer kids. I don't know. Let's see. I think I have to go to Ubud. I don't know. Let's see.
There's a lot of similarity. So in the first episode, we were trying to remember what did we do in the first Babaylan episode. In the first Babaylan episode, we talked a lot about how does one become a bab, what are their broad tasks, the gender issues around the Babaylan and such. And so here in this episode, I really wanted to dig in deeper into the actual job description. So in this portion, in this episode, this is actually the LinkedIn portion of our conversation, which will normally throw us into a tailspin of trigger us into the annoyance, which is LinkedIn. But this is the Babaylan job description. This is like, okay, cool. I had a spiritual episode, i.e. maybe an epileptic seizure, or I've been hearing voices and hearing things, or maybe I have an inner ear infection. I am now a candidate for being a Babaylan. What does this job entail? Okay, so what are the jobs and roles of the Babaylan?
Okay.
We're going to go through the first one, the obvious one. If your qualification is like hearing voices and seeing things, it's spirit medium. Spirit medium. So let's review in our Anito episode and also our Mami Mia episode about the dead. There are generally in spirits, there are two types of spirits that the Babaylan will interact with, in the rituals of like pag-anito and stuff. First is the bound spirits, where they live in certain things. They live
mountains,
trees, rivers.
What's that?
Plateau.
The mounds where the
punso
live.
Yes,
punso.
Yes. And also natural phenomena. So they're similar to the genie.
Like amihan, ganon.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
the north
Yes.
wind,
The north wind, the
storms.
monsoons. Yeah. So and the habagat, amihan and habagat.
I was
Habagat is
gonna make a Drag Race
monsoon.
joke, but you don't watch Drag Race yet.
I don't. Is there
Alright,
someone
I'll
named
wait.
Amihan?
No, there's someone named Monsoon. She just won like
Ooh, is she
the
Indian?
ultimate like all stars. No.
Oh, nice. Okay, so they are like they own places and concepts, like you said.
I
So
love it.
they buy concepts, right? So
So
weather
that's
things,
type one.
lightning. That's type one. They're bound, yeah.
Mm.
Or realms. There are realms in the spirit world, and they're also keepers or totems of animals and plants. So remember, there were anitos of this particular tree, which was a source of like rubber and insecticide and things like that. They have inhuman and abstract qualities. So they don't necessarily have features, right, that reflect, or their qualities will reflect their particular dominions, like characteristics that they have. And they don't normally appear in human form, and they're usually genderless and androgynous. So, and they really sometimes, most of the time, they don't really concern with themselves with human affairs. Humans come and go. So it's
Is it
not
still
like
type
Greek gods.
one?
This is still the bound ones, the bound.
Okay. Yeah,
And
yeah.
so the rituals involving these spirits are almost always conducted outdoors. So you want to pray for rain, you want to pray for good harvest, you want to have a good wild boar hunt, ganon. The
So
second,
it has
oh
to do
no,
with like
okay. So those are the bound spirits.
I was gonna say something. So basically, it's kind of like you call on the spirits of things that are out of your control to kind of ask for help with things that are out of your control, right?
Mm-hmm,
Like the
mm-hmm.
weather, the seas, like when you're traveling,
Yeah, the
like
rain.
basically things that have to do with external factors because you know
Mhm.
that that's outside the bounds of like what human like influence is.
The
Is that like the thinking?
it's in my head.
Mm.
It's more of like
And are they the
the
more
anthrop.
powerful?
It
Are
seems
they the
like
more powerful gods?
depends on what you consider as power, right? If it has something to do with one's health and luck, that might be an important thing too. But what it seems like for me is they seem to be the less influential they're less anthropomorphic, they're less like people, so they won't be capricious, or they won't be annoyed at you, or they won't irrationally just want to hurt you or steal your soul, ganon. So
Okay.
in terms of the what you said about like the powerful and beyond your control, I do think the unbound ones are also, I think they're also beyond one's control, because
Or they're more volatile,
they're
I
more
guess.
volatile. Yeah. So the second type is the unbound spirits, and they have an independent existence. They can appear in animals like birds, and they have also human-like forms, and many times they have gender differentiation and personal names.
And
So
are they so because we talked about Anitos, right?
yes,
Are they like the gods or are they more
they're more
of
like
like
Encanto.
this was our ancestor from way back and we call on him to help out?
No,
Like
no,
which one is
no,
it?
no, no. They're more Encanto. These are Encantos.
So people
Yeah.
okay, so spirits with like a lot of power
Yes,
basically.
yes. They're like demigods. They're like they live in certain realms. They have weird forms. They have interests, they're sociable. They want to be involved in human
Yeah.
activities and
Because because remember when we talked about this? So eh, the weird thing about our like pantheon of gods is there's no real formal pantheon. So there's
yeah.
just this like assumption of in certain cultures and not all, there's like one big major god,
Mhm.
Bathala,
Yeah.
or what's the name of the other ones? Like
Captain in the sky.
Kaptan, Melu with the libag, and they concern themselves with the cosmos, which is like creating earth, the heavens, the
Creating
seas, and
humans
stuff
in
like
general,
that.
but not this particular human.
Creation of
Ganon.
humans like at the start, right?
Mm-hmm,
And I
mm-hmm.
think the assumption is like those big major gods, they don't have the time or the energy to kind of
For
look
the
at
inclination.
or the inclinate. They're like, you guys, this is like too little for me. Like it's too small fries. Like they don't they don't concern themselves with very small, minor human affairs. And that's why they kind of pass on their power to like these other spirits, right? So that in a sense is part of the hierarchy, that there are other powerful spirits that exist in the earth which are closer to human affairs and would be better equipped to help out. Because the bigger gods, they don't care. Like, this is, you guys, this is small fry.
I also think
like
it's not so much as they designated it. It's just like they don't really just give. They really don't.
They don't care. They don't care. This is care. I already did my job. Like, this is just you're one of like 7 billion humans. Like, figure it out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
and then you have other power. That's why you have other powerful spirits. And that's probably why you also need to incentivize them with sacrifices and stuff. Because why? Why would they help you?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. They're not like these benevolent, like,
they're not like watching you and listening to you all the time. So you always have to make a big show about things and make a big sacrifice. For example, it's the pre-colonial version of the squeaky wheel gets the grease. You have to squeak, 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 so that the big entities will get you and pay attention to you. Hello, it's me. Hello, I would like to speak to the manager of this mountain.
That's so annoying. You'll just like.
But that's how you get the big attention. So so these unbound spirits are closest to like what we call encanto, right? That we talked about in Thank You
Stop
Fairy.
Right Now. Thank you very much.
I was gonna say Okay Ka Fairy Ko. That was not the episode title.
Maybe if we do a sequel, we can
Okay Ka
that.
Fairy Ko. Okay, so so that's the equivalent in modern folklore. Unlike the mound spirits, their spirits can come into the household and their rituals can take place both indoors and outdoors. But it's not a strict classification. Again, a lot of these classifications are post fact. So they're like using established norms to put organization into it. Okay. So those are the two broad classifications, but again, it's not hard and fast, right? So sometimes a bound spirit can be unbound, like a great example is Maria Makiling, remember? Because she like lived among people for a while, and vice versa. So some spirits can be like bound. They used to be a spirit or a fairy, and then they become stuck to a forest, or they get stuck
like
on a tree.
Like, what's his name? Like Apong Malyari, who is supposed to be in hiding in Mount Pinatubo. Because he's angry.
Yes.
That's a story we'll get into another
separately.
Time. That's very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and you have like personal experience.
Yeah, because not personal experience, but I'm super interested because it's Kapampangan folklore. Sorry, mythology. And the drama is very interesting to me.
The drama is real, but also like the
this is the gods must be crazy.
World.
So we have to talk about gods
at some point, right?
At some point.
Okay, so
I was a kid in
91, 92?
In 91, 92. I think I was there for one of the initial floods or secondary floods, not the major one. But I lost friends there. So
So
we'll talk about that at another time.
Yes.
But so Maria Makiling, I guess Mariang Sinukuan.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, Maria Kakao.
Who is supposed to be like, again, Sinukuan was supposed to be a boy, and then they changed him into
a lady. Anyway. So not all rituals that the Babaylan will do will be about possession. It's usually, it doesn't always result in the spirit coming into the Babaylan. Sometimes they just converse through the abay. Remember my sidekick. Abay. And sometimes that's for the bound spirits, right? So if I have to ask for rain, I won't necessarily get possessed. But if I have to
because it's too big a spirit, maybe
they're in the sky, and so we're just making a collect call. Collect call. Do you remember collect calls? Collect calls before you have to make for the kids, if you were like somewhere far away and if you have to call someone in another country and you don't want to pay, you call them and you say, this is a collect call for Ice Laksamana. So the operator,
and then the operator
will have to
ask them, like, do you want to accept this collect call from this person?
Yes. And then you can like not. So when you're traveling sometimes and you don't have money, you can still make phone calls to like your mom or whoever. Or not. or not, if you had a fight. Anyway, so you make a collect call. But for unbound spirits, they always possess the shamans. They always possess the shamans, either voluntarily or involuntarily. So either the shaman will like come into, so they say, come into my body, or I will force you and I will pull you into my body, right? So bound spirits that inadvertently stick to other humans, not the babaylan. So for example, I'm a babaylan and then I get called to this household because the spirit has stuck to this other person. They can be dangerous if they have been bound. So I guess the closest equivalent is like it's like a exorcism. I guess it's like a demon possession, but it's not a demon. It's just an unbound spirit, right?
It's like, remember when we talked about the encantos, right? So some of the phenomena that could happen is if an encanto gets too attached to you, they would try to possess you, or they would try to keep your spirit, right? So either the spirit of the encanto like possesses your body, or they will take your spirit
away.
with them.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then
that's why they
shaman
call
can
the
call it back.
babaylan.
Yes. So what are the symptoms? And I think I teased on this a little bit. Like, what are the symptoms if a person has a bound spirit on them? So the bound spirit causes spiritual sicknesses, and it ranges from confusion, strange food cravings, lust, and unreasoning anger, or PMS.
A lot of strange food cravings. But
like,
is it okay? Does it have to do with like the Encanto food? Like, you know how they like black rice or unsalted rice?
I think it has to do with like, I want something that is not something I would eat normally.
So like pickles and ice cream, also known as pregnancy cravings.
Exactly. So I was like, okay, why is
maybe
this
the person
a
was
symptom?
just pregnant.
Why is this a symptom? I have a hypothesis. So my hypothesis is the spirit is from another They say the spirit is from another province, and so they're asking things that are not indigenous here. Like if a person from Sikihor, a spirit from Sikihor goes to see like Cebu and like, I want Sikihor mangoes, and like these Mactan mangoes are not good enough for me.
But that's not a strange food craving.
I think it would be.
Maybe they're from Biringan City.
Oh, Biring again. So weird food cravings is a symptom of a person with a bound spirit attached to them. So how do babaylans deal with it, right? So they will speak to certain bound spirits themselves directly. They might need the intercession of their abay or abyan, like we talked about earlier, as an intercessor, which I think is also very familiar. It's kind of like when you ask for patron saints to help do things for you. But here they're like a direct translator for the bound spirits. And then bound spirits
I don't know obviously the origins of this, but I have a theory that patron saints were only invented as a tool of colonization.
I would agree.
And indoctrination across the globe.
Yeah.
The reason there's so many saints across is you just took whoever was the minor or major deity that they had in the country that you're invading, like Bridget from Ireland or whatever. Yeah. And they just said, oh, this is a saint. So actually they're lower beings in our mythology. So you're actually part of this faith as well.
Yeah. I think I agree. And I even challenged that with like, it's kind of like, okay, this is another aside.
Which obviously for me to say, being a scholastica Benedictine educated person. But like the more you learn, right, you realize that this is genuinely how it was created. Now, obviously, whether this is something that's still useful in the future, that's obviously up to the person who practices that faith. Yeah. But if you look at history, that's what it's saying. Right?
Like again, as a San Agustin was a doctor of the church. Which I have no idea what that means, but a doctor of the church. And his teachings really are always cited in, City of God, things like that, like things that he wrote. But, he wasn't Catholic until his mom was going to die. He lived a life of non-Catholicism. He was I think he was a really good philosopher. And like when his mom was gonna die, she was like, "My dying wish is for you to be a Catholic." And then
is that true though?
It's true.
Is that for reals?
Yeah, it's true. He didn't convert until his mom asked him to as her dying wish, and he converted. And then the translation is like, "Oh, but the Holy Spirit came into him and said like, oh, I've changed my mind and it's changed my wish." Blah, blah. Anyways.
Yeah. I think it's either of two things. So I think that either you assimilate these existing deities and kind of reframe them as part of your existing religion as a way to kind of like obviously indoctrinate the people in the area that you're invading, or as these big figures emerge, right? You kind of like, that's why canonization sometimes happens, right? Because these are influential people in the areas where they existed. So you want to make sure that the people who worship them or follow them still stay with your faith. So you canonize them, you make them part of your history and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that they don't form their own separate
It's kind of like when recording studios find these independent artists and sign them to their label. So Saints just got signed to the label.
It's kind of like how big tech companies just buy great startups.
Yeah, they want market share. They just want market share. So that's what Saints were. Babaylan, they don't have the market share for interacting with spirits. They especially bound spirits. Non-Babaylan can also interact with bound spirits. Like, for example, if I was like a hunter going to offer something for a good hunt, that's like a ceremony that I can do before entering the forest, right? And so I remember when we were climbing up Pico del Oro, there was like an offering at the base of one of the bigger mango trees. And then I was like, yeah, no, a Babaylan probably didn't come. Like, it was just like a random hunter who just came up and put the offering there. It was really cute. Ella almost sat on it. So the Babaylans, or like they're called in other provinces, Catalonans, they also perform public ceremonies. So apart from the house calls that they do, they also do public ceremonies for prosperity, fertility, or seasonal weather. But they also, and their private services are not just in the possessions, but they also diagnose and cure ailments that were they were respected for these functions. But they were also, some were also, not all, were sorcerers, and they can do black magic. And there was a lot of them. So they were too large so to put them in competition with one another, right? So there wasn't like, this is the greatest Babaylan in this place and this is the greatest Babaylan in this place, and so like now pit themselves against each other. But it's really more of like every barangay, every province
Battle of the Babayla.
I know. That should be a Pokemon.
It's like
Pokemon.
Or I was like Mortal Kombat, maybe.
Or Iron Chef. More like Iron Chef.
Wait, so I have a question. So if the Babaylans do this, and obviously people pay them for their services, right? So do Babaylans end up becoming rich? Like, is it like, because everyone does it, right?
It's an aspirational occupation.
They're like rich and powerful and influential. And that's why people sometimes pay to become Babaylan. Exactly. Because it's a very lucrative profession.
Exactly. It's kind of like, again, going back to Catholicism and parallelisms with Catholicism, it's like when families who have too many children, or like sons, would pay to have their sons go to the seminary, their younger sons, because the clergy is influential.
It's a bit lucrative to become a priest if you get into the right places and stuff like that. Yeah.
Look at the Borgias, right? So they do those. And then individual success, if they're like a really good Babaylan, it's not attributed to the Babaylan itself, but to the power of the deities whom they identify and took possession of them during their ceremonies, or like their fancy dancing. There's a Tagalog word olak. And according to Ferdinand Blumentritt, it is a term for the trembling of the whole body of the Catalonan when they become possessed by the spirit.
Okay.
Yes. As spirit mediums. And when they conducted seances, they spoke with the voices of the Anito. So they changed their voice, the big voice. Do you remember that whole thing in the 80s where the people were saying they were being possessed by the Santo Niño, and they all or like duendes, and they all started talking like
I don't remember that thing from the 80s. I wasn't alive.
Oh my God. In the 80s, before you were born, there was this whole slate of children being featured on the news saying that they were possessed by either the Santo Niño or duendes. And it was like a lot. And they would always speak in this little voice, blah, blah, blah.
But if they're children, wouldn't that be
even smaller voice? Like little tiny voices like this. Like para silang finesse forward. Like chipmunks.
Oh man.
So yes. And so they said they spoke with the voice of the Anito, and they're assisted by an alagar or alagad, meaning your personal assistant, your abay, to carry on the dialogue with the supernatural. And they also sent their own souls or their kaluluwa to seek lost souls. Like you said, if the soul has been taken away, they send their souls away.
But why do they send their own souls and not their abay?
No, the abay will guide them in the spirit world. Their abay is their tour guide. And then to make sure, the abay makes sure they don't get lost in the spirit world, right? So, yeah. So when they're in the trance, the state is called taro-taro, literally meaning voices, for it is believed that the ancestral spirits entered the body, the ancestral spirit or unbound spirit, and were speaking from inside her. Blumentritt also said, Blumentritt. Taro, Tagalog word, describing the Catalonan while possessed by the spirit in the States. They said, Taro. Also, the Catalonan had a gift of prophecy. Sometimes. And she was named Masidhi. Sidhi is the fervent one. Masidhi.
Yes.
When they have the prophecy, when they're like a clairvoyant. Okay.
Are you gonna talk a bit more about like the black magic, how it happened?
Later on. Later on. Now I'm gonna talk about
I have a lot of questions, but I didn't want to disrupt your flow.
So we've covered one of the main functions of the Babaylan, which is as a medium. Now, before we get to the next function, we have to set apart again another like foundation principle thing, like we did in the previous portion. So next portion kasi is healing, but we have to discuss about like the principles of sickness first in this period, right? So their shamans kasi are the Babaylan are known to do two broad kinds of healing. There's the natural healing for natural illnesses or non-spiritual illnesses. And then there's the spiritual illnesses. Now, the non-spiritual illness is pretty straightforward because you can, I stubbed my toe, I need to make sure it doesn't get infected, or like I have a toothache.
Because they're experts in herbology.
Yes, but also right? It doesn't. Yes, they are, but also you don't necessarily need a Babaylan for it. You can just have like a lower order herbalista or like like that. And so herbalista,
Herbalife.
Herbalife, or just someone who's like really knowledgeable in folk medicine, right? But for the spiritual illnesses, you really need a Babaylan. So what are the principles of like the broad reason of like how a spiritual illness occurs, right? So the principle is, it's an Austronesian belief that and Filipinos believed it, the animistic Filipinos believed it, that there is a soul called soul dualism. There are twin souls. But unlike like the Native American belief of twin souls of like a male and a female, everyone has a twin soul or double souls. And it's comprised of two souls. The breath of life is called ginhawa or hininga. Ginhawa or hininga. And it stays in the living body. That's the breath of life. And then the astral soul, which you know what it is? It's the kalag.
Kalag. The kalag.
Yes, balik kalag, right? So it's the kalag or the kaluluwa. The kalag or kaluluwa travels and can travel the spirit world. And the breath of life is ginhawa or hininga.
And when an encanto is attracted to you, they'll try to lure your kalag away. So not necessarily your physical body. They're less interested in that. They're more interested in your soul.
Yeah. So the ginhawa or the hininga, which is the breath of life, lives in the pit of your stomach, in your liver.
In your, was that sacral chakra?
In your sacral chakra.
Is that where it is?
No, in your pubic area. No, in your liver, it
root
says.
Chakra?
Root chakra.
No, sacral. No, root chakra is in the pubic area. Sacral chakra is in like the lower stomach near your belly button.
Okay. So this one says near the liver. Where is the liver?
It's a belly.
Is it in the belly? Okay. So it's in the liver. And then the kalag lives in the head, obviously. So the ginhawa represents the person's body and bodily urges, while the kalag represents the person's identity, mind, strength of will, and they are both required. So natural illnesses are the result of the damage to the ginhawa. So they don't need a shaman, as the death of the ginhawa will also mean death of the body. And they can range from wounds, broken bones, poisoning, snake bites, and they can be treated by shamans, but also apprentices, assistants, or the herbalist, those people who are trained. So like assistant brand manager versus the brand manager. The spiritual illnesses are believed to be caused by the separation of the kalag from the ginhawa, and this separation happens during sleep, where the kalag leaves and wants to travel the spirit world, resulting in dreams. And the separation can happen also when the person is awake, and it causes the separation can get it's lost in the spirit world, or the kalag was captured, attacked, or seduced by another spirit, or simply the refusal of the kalag to return to the ginhawa. And it's not lethal in itself, but it can result in the loss of mind and identity, insanity, right? And the spiritual illnesses can include delirium, depression, trauma, and fainting spells, and other mental illnesses. I didn't know that fainting was a mental illness. The evil or undesirable behavior can also be blamed as disharmony between the kalag and the ginhawa. So, which brings me to a small side story. My dad used to believe, and it was also in a story in Once Upon a Time, which was like a children's mythology TV show in the Philippines back in the 90s, that if you go to sleep hungry, your kalag will escape during sleep and go to the rice cooker and then get trapped in the rice cooker forever and ever.
But why do they also say that, like, if you go to sleep with like super full, like if you go to sleep like right after eating, you're gonna have bangungot, which is nightmare.
Yeah. It's nightmare that kills you.
Does that have anything to do with your kalag?
No, I don't think so. I think that's just bad digestive.
But you know what? Exactly. I really love.
Do you know, by the way, if you eat too much cheese before bed, you have weird cheese dreams.
I heard that if you drink apple juice before bed, you'll have weird dreams. But
I have never.
This is an unverified.
Okay. Anyways, sorry, you were saying.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I find it super interesting that we had this idea of like the equivalent maybe of like a root chakra, crown chakra type of thing. And they explained a lot of harmony and they explained a lot of like illnesses or states of mind with like disharmony or misalignment of the equivalent of the chakras, basically, right?
Remember, there's a huge Hindu influence in the Philippines. Like Bathala is the word for Bathala. It comes from a Hindu word for God, Batara. Yeah. So, and many of the gods in the bound spirits have names that are similar to Hindu terms as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if not direct influence of Hindu, but also like a root mythology or a root origin. Interestingly, in the video that I sent to you on TikTok, Nico Valdez, right? He was doing a breakdown of the right pronunciation for Raja or Raja or like the honorific Raja. And one of the things he mentioned was that Babaylan seems to have a similar root language to Sanskrit. And it doesn't mean that Baybayin came from Sanskrit, but wherever Sanskrit came from, Baybayin seems to also come from that because there's so many similarities across the board. Anyway, so I wouldn't be surprised if that belief like really carries on. Anyways, okay,
No.
so what happens? I know, right? What happens when a lag has left or is disturbed or there's this harmony? One thing that we know that exists today is that Visayan Babaylan do a ritual of batak dungan or batakan, and it strengthens and empowers the kalag of a person to prepare them for challenges, problems, and obstacles. And it's also protects the person from possible spiritual attack caused by a malevolent spirit or sorcery. But also, you can call someone back. So online, there is a babaylan called Babaylan Tata Adlaw who you can pay. And when the person's soul, in Bisaya is called dungan, so it's batak dungan. When the soul becomes weak, I guess dungan is also kalag. If the soul is weak or lost, he goes through or goes through a traumatic experience or is cursed, or another spirit stole it from her. When this happens, there will be prone to never-ending sickness and misfortune. So not just a physical illness, but misfortune. So this babaylan will perform a traditional offering ritual to retrieve the lost kalag, to strengthen it. And so that way the person can withstand it. So not just are they calling it back, but then they'll fortify it. So here is a testimonial story
of someone who
contracted Babaylan Tata Adlaw. Babaylan Tata Adlaw, if you can hear this, we'd love to hear from you, and because this is like super interesting. So this was a case of a 24-year-old man who said to be nawawala sa sarili, or what is the English? Nawawala sa sarili literally means I am outside myself.
You've lost yourself.
Oh yeah, but I think it transliterates into I've lost my mind, or like I've just I'm out of my whatever. According to his mother, he started behaving differently and was acting like he was possessed by some spirit after killing a large monitor lizard which lived by the seashore where the sea and the river and the sea meet, or an estuary of some sort. So he killed a big lizard, a bayawak, and then now he was acting weird. The albulario, or the witch doctor, who's not a babaylan, he's like a native witch doctor, advised the mother to make sure that the boy is not exposed to any smoke from any burnt parts of the dead monitor lizard. But since the boy was possessed, he was able to influence his mother to burn the dead creature. It was then when his condition began to worsen. The boy stabbed himself in the stomach.
Oh my God.
Which injured his intestines. He was brought to the hospital in critical condition. At this point, the albulario refused to cure him, and saying he will only resume after the boy becomes stable and he is released from the hospital. Desperate to prevent her son from further injury, the mother resorted to tying his hands and feet. He was bound because lagi siyang nagwawala. He was always, lashing out, I guess. His cousin asked me to heal him at a distance, and with the help of my spirit guide, or abyan, I was able to restore the child's diwa, and he became normal again, remotely. So, Babaylan Tata Adlaw offers services of batak dungon, or this calling back the kalag and healing, but also but also love potions and promotions at work. So take note. Finding jobs also is also another thing that they get.
I mean, come on.
Also, yeah, no, but like a range of things, but these are like not wealth, but also like we were talking about in the anting episode. It was more protection than something outward. So it's like, it's more defense rather than offense. So, but also like, if nag-break na kayo ng boyfriend mo, tapos parang gusto mo balikan ka, ganyan. That also helps. Or like, if you fought and you want to get back together, that's also a service that he does. Tata Adlaw.
I love it.
I know, right? I know.
What are his rates?
I didn't look. pa, but I bet it's reasonable. There's like love potion you can buy. It's in this cute bottle.
Oh wow!
You can also get like
but honestly,
you can get like a juju, like a little protection packet also.
Yeah. I mean, I bet that's the most lucrative part, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's like looking for love or whatever. Like
Yes.
since time immemorial.
Yes,
Gayuma.
it's a billion-dollar industry.
Yeah, exactly.
I love it. I love it so much. I love that it's in the modern times, and I think he should add
Yeah.
Dude, you can get witchcraft. Oh, you can like alis usog. Alis usog. Like if you feel like you have the evil eye on you and you're always unlucky, you can hire him from that too. So, more power, man. I mean, on Etsy, you can hire witches from Ireland to cast spells for you.
I love it.
I
love it. Yeah.
Babaylan, Tata Adlaw, you should be on Etsy. 100%. Great. You can charge bigger rates, whatever. Anyways, so that's that healing power, right? The other function is divination. Yes, so it's tied closely to healing because the divination is used as a diagnostic tool. So it's like old school MRIs and old school X-rays and sphygmomanometers and oximeters. So it's done by the Babaylan, and specialized apprentices can also do the divination. So what do they use? This was so fascinating to me, and I would love to see what this looks like.
And sorry, divination here means interpretation
of
phenomena and
interpretation,
maladies.
but also like weather forecasting, but also like
so a bit of clairvoyance as well.
Yes, a bit of clairvoyance. So what they use is like, so like in Western cultures, there's like reading of tea leaves, tossing runes, reading entrails. So there's a lot of similarities. So they use seashells, ginger, quartz, tawas, and chicken entrails. And I remember in Batangas, what they call the witch doctor is Mang Tatawas. Tawas is alum, also deodorant. Like that's the deodorant that we use.
So it's a natural kind of deodorant that people use. You can buy it in like little packets. It's like a white. It looks like salt.
Mm-hmm. It's like a kind of salt. Yes.
It's like in between salt and like cocaine.
I was gonna say it's between salt and monosodium glutamate, but cocaine works too. But I bought a Tawas like deodorant from.
And by the way, you can just
French. It's
you,
from
you can
France.
just buy Tawas in like sari stores or
like a wet
little
market.
Little like side street stores. They sell them in like little tiny packets.
It is the best deodorant I have ever seen.
It's natural deodorant.
Yeah.
So do you know how they interpret it? Like what do they do with the ginger or the tawas or whatever?
Yeah, so they so different things, right? So for example, the diviners will have different methodologies for each of their tools, right? So for example, the diviner will use the tawas. It depends on their own preferences and their own inclinations. So what I know from the mantatawas is they will chop it. They will chop it because it's a very soft crystal. They'll chop it, and the shape that the tawas takes will interpret. So it's kind of like tea leaves too, like whatever happens in tea leaves. And similar to the ginger, what the ginger is shaped like is like will give an indication.
So cute.
Right? So it will give the indication, right? Of the sickness.
Because if you've seen like the so do they pick it up from the ground? You have to, right? Because you can't see it. So ginger is a root veg, obviously, and it sometimes can grow very big, and it has like multiple like deformed shapes. So it can
sometimes it looks like a person.
It looks like a person, like a mother with a child,
or like sometimes there's like two gingers hugging each other.
Yeah, so then it would be very open to like interpretation. And remember when we talked about the death with regard to like the entrails or like the innards, right? They would like cut open the chicken or pigs, and they would look at the color of the intestines, the color of the liver, because usually that's indicative of like the state of the spirit or something. So for example, when they would give offerings, they wouldn't stop until they see like a liver that is whitish. for example, because that means that the spirit is satisfied or whatever.
Exactly.
I'm guessing they interpret like the shape of the entrails or whatever, right?
Yes, the
Something
shape
like
and the
that.
state of the entrails. And then also, like you already talked about a lot of it, but also another topic that you talked about is they they foretell the future and perform geomancy rituals, and their key tool is the bakunawa, like where the
What's
bakunawa.
geomancy?
Geomancy is like magic and magic that has to do with the earth. So
it's like, it's like feng shui.
Yes, exactly. That's what feng shui
This
is.
is a great place to
build your
a
house, and it has to
house.
face this point, and it has to
Face
be built in
northwest.
March.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So if you guys have listened to our Bakunawa episode, we talk about how people interpreted the direction of the moon as an indication of where the Bakunawa serpent was facing.
Yeah.
And then depending on the time of the year, it's a great time to build a house because you're going to get married. It's a great time to build a house because you're going to be rich, or it's a bad time to build a house because you're going to be poor. So yeah, interesting. Okay.
Yes.
Oh yeah, because the Babaylans would be in charge of interpreting that calendar and all of those things.
And it's not just that. It's like what are great times to get married? What are the great times to travel? What are the great times to do trade and things like that. So it's very similar to feng shui. So, there are times of the month where you shouldn't start a new business.
Or any kind of astrological kind of.
Yeah. I always think like how bored were people that they would like just look for signs everywhere in the world to look for signs to help indicate two things, one thing or another, right? It's just thing in the connections that they would make, the leaps of logic, and what were the supporting evidence that led them to say like, no, this is sound logic. It's also
but like astrology has been big in every single culture.
Yeah. No, that's what I was saying. Like that people had so much time to, but it's so nuanced. It's so nuanced.
Is it maybe that just, I mean, isn't it just like a human attempt to try to control situations?
Yeah.
Either to control situations or to explain things that are out of your control. Either
and
way,
find
you have to come out.
patterns. It's two things. I think it's the marriage of this oversimplification, of course. I think it's the marriage of two things. It's the reason, it's the people's instinct to find reasoning and control. And it's the instinct to find patterns.
Yeah, because a lot of astrology stemmed from seasonal interpretations anyway, right? And then you try to extend that to other things. Like, you were born in, mid-July to mid-August, you must be a Leo, and therefore like this. And,
But also, I always think that there's some, I would love to see, like, is there a pre-colonial zodiac, right? Like, I get why Western zodiac makes a little bit of sense, right? You were born in summer, you were a Leo, so everyone was really happy when you were born, and so every time it's your birthday party, everyone wants to celebrate because Leo season is always summer and festivals and sunshine and things like that. And then people who are born in drearier seasons are more melancholy, iyakin, like they get depressed a lot and very moody. Maybe because it was rather at the time in a Western sort of temperate region, right? But in the Philippines, or like regions like the Philippines, where it's just like it's hotter, it's wetter, maybe there's only like 4 zodiacs. Are there zodiacs, and like people who are born in certain times, would they have certain behaviors, expected behaviors, or expected fates, right? Given our seasons are not that different, but there are still differences. I'm really interested to see like if someone was born in Samar during monsoon season where your house could get knocked down, what kind of person would that be, right?
Yeah.
So I'm in. That's something interesting to me. Adlaw, can you let us know? Okay, so this last function that I'll discuss today. So this function is sorcery. It's the magic. It's not all babaylans. Not all babaylans can do it. So some babaylans are able to control the physical world through incantation.
Define sorcery though. Like, what's the line between sorcery and like healing and all those other things?
So it's, remember we were talking a lot about defense. This is more offense, right? So most, they can control the physical world through talismans, through potions, through their spirit intermediaries. So because healers are more strongly associated with the sorcerers and the mediums, right? So in most cases, the healer is also a sorcerer. So there's like a Venn diagram of functions. So in order to counteract or cure an illness, the healers themselves must know sorcery. This relationship is most apparent in Sikihor, where healer sorcerers are still common. So
Sikihor is this like super mysterious island in, is it West Visayas? I think West Visayas. They're known for really, really great mangoes. But also like people do warn you when you travel that you have to be careful not to offend anyone.
Don't point at anything.
Don't point at anything, because the belief is that there's a lot of like practitioners, babaylans, I guess, or witch doctors in that area. So you really have to be careful. And you usually can't go there unchaperoned, right? So when people go there, usually you have a local or someone from like the neighboring islands to kind of be with you the whole entire time.
And you have to make offerings and things like that.
There are a lot of ghost stories or like
and monster stories and things like that. There's also this thing because it's near Dumaguete, right? And we want to go and live there. And our friend Ella, who's from that area, she says what they say that is if you have a white partner, don't take them to Sikihor because they will be tempted and they will never leave. Yeah.
Oh, because of the encanto. The
encanto
will
there.
Steal them.
We'll steal
so
your
we
white
can't
men.
bring...
No, we can't bring our
Shane.
white men.
We can't bring Brian.
No. Sorry. No, you know what? You and I go. We'll get some mangoes and then we'll leave them.
We'll leave them in Dumaguete.
Yeah.
City. Like you're not allowed to step out of the city.
No. Just there. Just stay in the city. It's just to have by the boardwalk. That's it. They don't where everyone can see you. Anyway, so in some provinces naman, the babaylan is entirely different from the medium is entirely different from the sorcerer. So diba in most places, in other tribes, there's an overlap. Healers can also be sorcerers and things like that. But in Manobo people, they are entirely different. So the babaylan, they deal with the spirit world and the supernatural beings, but they do not have spirit powers of their own. They are just interceders and whatever, and they can talk to the spirits. But the sorcerers are separate and considered a human being with powers gained from magical spells and objects. So if an illness is caused by sorcery, it is treated differently from an illness caused by spirits. Right? So there's a physical illness, I broke a bone, blah, blah, blah. There's my spiritual illness, which my kalag was taken away, blah, blah, blah. That's the babaylan's realm. But if the sickness was like, I got kulam, I got like, what's kulam? What's kulam? Voodoo. I got voodooed.
Or cursed or something.
I got cursed. I got mambabarang. Like a mambabarang is a sorcerer who uses bugs to infect the person. I got barang, then that is the non-cursed portion is treated with spells, antidotes, physical healing, herbs, medicine. The latter requires magic. Right. In contrast, in Visayan society, so Manobo is more north, in Visayan is in the middle, the most powerful shamans are called dalaganan, or busalian. They are purportedly able to command the elements through their magic spells and the strength of their kalag, or strength of their spirit. Yeah. Okay, diba? Like they either gain it through them being possessed early on, or they gain it through spiritual encounters, hearing voices, seeing things, and then they get initiated, and then so.
And do you think that, like, because there's a lot of lore about, obviously in multiple cultures, right, of if you try to undertake black magic, it does not, like, it has consequences for you. Right? Is that something similar that
it doesn't seem
seen?
like it. It doesn't seem like this karmic type of thing doesn't seem to occur in these readings that I've seen, which is interesting, no?
Yeah, in some of my research, there's a huge part of belief that the Datu is himself a sorcerer. So
yes.
one way to kind of really know how powerful the Datu is, or the way that they kind of mythologize their Datus or their like leaders basically, is to talk about the magic that the Datu himself or herself possesses. Yeah. Right? And so there are different kind of powers attributed to the Datu. A power where you could basically kind of like hypnotize someone to do what you want them to do, or powers where you can like enslave or ensnare them, or powers where you can like literally just kill them.
Yeah.
Like that.
With a glance.
Yeah, exactly. And so I wonder, is this linked with the Babaylan kind of tradition, or is it separate?
I don't think so. I think it's a completely separate one. I think the from what I understand.
But is it the same idea of the kalag?
I don't think so. I think it's different because it's saying sorcery in the tribes where it is a separate thing. They derive their power, again, it's different per province, diba? So here in the Visayan, they say the sorcerer and the shaman is one, and it's because of their power of the kalag. But in the Manobo, they're saying that it's because of spells and magical objects like anting-anting that they have their magical powers, and not the kalag. So I think I think there's no, I don't want to say there's like a hard and fast rule, but also there's nothing that says that a Datu cannot be a Babaylan. In fact,
true,
when the Datu is out and raiding or doing whatever, the Babaylan is in charge. Yeah, the Babaylan is is vice Datu, deputy Datu. Yeah. So what are the kinds of things that the sorcerer can do? Right. They can conjure fire and water, flight, shape-shifting, invisibility, invulnerability, and the ability to call down disasters. So if you remember, diba, there's an Anito in the Big Little Gods episode where if they are invoked, they can leap tall bounds, they can be invisible, they're like X-Men. It's like an X-Men Anito, and they can lend powers to the shaman. Right? And there are accounts. So, for example, the most common accounts is rainmaking. Okay. So there was a Babaylan. Her name was Estrella Bangot Banwa. She was a Karay-a Maaram from Iloilo. And according to legends, she alleviated a 3-year drought that performed a ritual that summoned a rainstorm.
How did she do it? Did she make lots of sacrifices?
She made, I don't know, she did a ritual. Didn't say what the ritual was. It could have been a closed ritual too, because sometimes the secrecy, a component of the magic. This wraps up our second episode of the Babaylan. We hope you've enjoyed everything so far. Let us know if there's anything that we've missed, and there's lots more to cover in our coming episode.
While you're waiting, we just wanted to kind of remind you guys where you can find us. So where can they find us, Anima?
In the Gods Must Be Crazy.pod on Instagram. And also you can listen to us on Anchor, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, everywhere and anywhere there's podcasts, you can find us.
And, if you'd like to kind of help us, I think the best way to help us is really just to leave a rating or a review, or, even better, like recommend it to like 1 or 2 friends who you feel might be interested in these topics. Is always the best way to kind of help out the pod so that more people can find out about us.